Life Audio.
Welcome to the T-Must Podcast, where we share how grace, commitment, and cooperation can help couples live the everyday moments of marriage together. Hey everyone, we're Ted
and Ashleigh Slater. What's the secret to a strong marriage? Well, today we're going to share with you what we think it is. So Ted, about 2 months ago,
Yes.
I started seriously strength training.
Yes. Very impressive, very inspired, but not to action. Just inspired.
Oh, like you're not inspired to action.
No, but I am inspired.
Yeah, like I had done some strength training like at home before, like
Right.
Apple videos or Pilates. I think I've always been an active person. I
Sure.
sometimes go
Yes.
through shorter seasons of inactivity, but I've never like gone to the gym to like lift weights.
And you are now waking up early in the morning, heading off to the gym at the break of day and lifting them weights and pushing them weights and moving them weights.
That's because I've got the most energy in the morning. Yes. And you actually, like, I'm in my mid-40s now. Weight is not coming off in the same way it used to.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm reading I need to build muscle. And so you actually tracked this place down. This is an example of you listening to me,
Yes.
jumping in to fix an issue, and me being extremely grateful that you jumped in to
Look at
fix
that.
an issue.
Sometimes guys fixing problems, it just works out.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun.
Not
'cause
always, but sometimes.
Sometimes it's fun because I'll like go in and I'll be like, oh, like 2 weeks ago I was lifting this amount, and
Right.
now I've gone
You
up
had
5
me
pounds.
buy new weights for you, like free weights,
Right.
dumbbells.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're 15 pounders, which is not big, but that's big for
It's
me.
big for me.
So, okay, well, speaking of building muscle,
Here's the tie-in.
do you remember those high strikers like at the county fair or at places like Six Flags over Georgia? It's also like the strength tester or strongman
It's where you
game.
use like the big. It's not a hammer, like a Thor's hammer that's really big.
See, I
And
was
you
gonna
whack it down on something, and something goes up and it rings the bell.
Yes, I was going to say a Popeye-sized mallet, but here's
Mallet,
the thing.
Yes, that's a good way.
Thor is a much more
Relevant. Yeah.
like example.
It's a marvelous example.
Yes, it is. Well, have you ever tried one of those?
No. Because I
even-
know I would get 25% out of 100.
Not even like as a kid?
No, I've always been headstrong and body weak.
I love you for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't tried it either, but we've both seen like other people try it. You
Yes.
know, like the hopeful person who
Yeah.
firmly grips that mallet and
Comes down
confidently
hard.
raises it.
And they're humiliated like I would be.
Yeah. Well, I would be too.
Yeah.
Although not as humiliated as I would have been 2 months ago. I'm a little bit stronger.
You're much stronger.
But so when someone does win,
Yes.
I've always kind of assumed that their victory was the result of sheer strength.
Being the strongest one in the room.
But did you know it's not?
I did not know that.
Yeah. It turns out that most of the time, it's not. So Brett and Kate McKay over at The Art of Manliness, and this is an article that's...
The art of manliness. Okay,
Yes.
keep going. This is great.
This is an article or a blog post that's a few years old, and they basically tell you how to win some of these carnival games.
Yes.
And they say that it's swing accuracy and swing technique, not pure muscle, that truly makes a winner.
So it's not brute force, gritting your teeth and whacking it.
Yeah, so it's not about dependence on muscle strength, but rather follow through once the mallet is in hand.
Follow through. I feel like you're going to use that in this podcast as a metaphor.
Yes, you think I'm going somewhere with this. Well, you would be right.
Yeah. Okay.
So what does this have to do with marriage and
Follow
the
through.
secret to a strong
Follow
marriage?
through.
I'm getting there. Okay. When it comes to keeping a marriage strong, yes, it's important to go in with a strong foundation. Obviously, the stronger the better. I mean, do premarital counseling or mentoring.
Yes.
Ask for
Big
feedback from family and friends. Work through conflict. Don't ignore red flags. And I think most importantly, build the foundation of the marriage on a relationship with Jesus. I mean, that's most important. But even when we start with the strongest of foundations and know what we need to do, if we don't have consistent follow through on feeding, protecting, and enjoying our marriage, it isn't going to be strong.
For some reason, I got this vision of this little creature in the corner of the room that you feed every once in a while. And that's A marriage. Sorry, that is not what we're talking about. Oh,
yeah, but now I can't get that image out of my head.
I know, right?
Okay.
Well, you need to feed marriage.
Yeah, so I think the true secret to a strong marriage is more about our follow-through in these 3 specific areas than about how strong we are going into it.
Excellent, yeah.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
So what are some practical ways we can help score high on the strength meter of marriage? You like that?
I love it.
Yes. Okay. Well, after a short break, we'll talk about these 3 areas and practical things within each one that we as couples can practice. So today we're talking about how the secret to a strong marriage is follow through in these 3 specific areas. And the first area is to actively feed your marriage, not the creature in the corner of the room. So, I mean, we're not static. As long as we're living, we're changing.
Yep. A river always changes. What did they say? You can't step into the same river twice?
Yeah, or the same spot.
Stream, something like that. Because the water's always moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always different.
Yeah.
Every day's new.
And the same is true of marriage. So if we want our marriage to stay strong, we have to feed it on a daily basis. So what does it mean to feed our marriage?
There's a great question.
Okay. Well, obviously the word feed is a verb. It's a word that denotes action. And just like eating to nourish our bodies is more than simply putting, our hand to our mouth, feeding our marriage is more than merely interacting regularly with our spouse. I think it matters, just like it matters what kind of sustenance we put into our bodies, it matters what kind of interactions fuel our relationship.
Oh, this is good. I'm looking forward to seeing how you unpack this.
Okay. So what can we actively feed our marriage so it stays strong and healthy? I have a few ideas. 1.
Tacos.
Well, that's going to nourish your body. I mean, maybe it's good for your marriage too. Give your spouse praise.
That's an excellent suggestion.
Thank you. Well, did you know that the Harvard Business Review says the ideal praise to criticism ratio is 5 positive comments for every 1 negative comment?
I would think that would take some effort,
Yeah.
honestly, because we tend to critique, evaluate, criticize. That's what people do. But yeah, if you're grateful and you're more positive, I can see how that definitely help your relationship.
Yeah, I didn't read the article in full. Like I scanned it, which maybe is not the most responsible thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think they were saying people perform better, like in their jobs.
Absolutely, of course.
When they have more
attaboys.
Praise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still need to buy some sticky notes so I can put them on your computer. I looked. I couldn't find any.
I've got 2 on my computer. One says, "Go get 'em, Tiger. You got this." And the other's somewhere over there.
Yeah. And I think it was an Us Time Challenge a few weeks ago or a few episodes ago for me to put more on your computer. I am failing. But that's a tangent. Okay. So
Second.
Approach conflict like an adventure. And this one I think needs a little more explaining. We do have a really old episode that talks
so don't
about it.
pursue conflict, but approach it when it exists as though this is an adventure.
Yes. Okay. Well, in The Hobbit, because we are big Lord of the Rings fans, Bilbo Baggins tells Gandalf, "Sorry, I don't want any adventures, thank you. Not today." And then he goes on to describe adventures as nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things make you late for dinner. And I think a lot of us feel that way about conflict, right?
Right.
But if we look at Bilbo's story from start to finish, we see that he missed something early on. Something that I think we also miss when we choose to run from the discomfort of conflict. And it's this. The uncomfortable in life doesn't merely force us to change. It often leads to good and much needed change. Change that the easy way can't and doesn't bring.
Right.
So,
and oftentimes you can't get there unless there's some kind of conflict you're working through.
Yes. And dealing with conflict in marriage can be uncomfortable and inconvenient. It can disturb our status quo, and it can disrupt our dinner plans or date nights. So, as a result, I think we often are like Bilbo and we say, "Sorry, I don't want any conflict, thank you, not today." So we ignore, avoid, or pretend it doesn't exist. But what if we stopped running from conflict and instead started viewing it as an adventure, as something that can feel like a dangerous and risky undertaking, but in reality can bring about our good?
That's a great way to think of it.
Yeah.
I challenge people to pause this podcast and ponder that and then press play when you're ready to continue. Yeah. That's good to think about. Ponder.
Yeah. All right. You ready for the next? The next 2 are pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
So 1, create and cultivate shared interests.
Okay.
because that means you do things together, you enjoy things together. And 2, pursue your spouse regularly.
And that's somewhat metaphorically. Like, you don't want to be running around the house
chasing them. No, okay. So I went on a road trip with one of our girls this weekend.
Yes.
I get home.
Yes.
I come upstairs, and there's this really pretty rose in this little glass vase next to my side of the bed from you. That was you pursuing me.
Yeah.
It was just very sweet.
It was sweet. I felt good that I made the decision to find that and put it there.
Yeah. So that's like an example of that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we're going to take another short break.
Short.
And when we come back, we'll talk about 2 more areas we need to have follow through in. So we're talking about 3 areas that, if we practice, can make our marriages strong. And the first one was, what was it? It was actively feed your marriage. How did I forget already? Okay, and number 2 is diligently protect your marriage.
Yes, okay, good. Let's unpack this.
Okay, so it's not enough to feed our marriages. We also need to diligently protect our relationships. And what does that look like? Mm-hmm. So protect, according to dictionary.com, because I like to define words in this episode,
That's good.
Apparently.
You got to define terms.
Means to defend or guard from attack, invasion, loss, annoyance, and insult. And I think often the first things that come to mind when we think of protecting a marriage are like the big bad things like infidelity and divorce. And we did recently have an episode on strategies for safeguarding your marriage from affairs. So that's definitely important. But I think we also need to not forget to be on the offense when it comes to seemingly smaller things like passivity, disconnection, and bitterness.
It can become easy to be passive because I already got the girl.
Yes, you do.
You know? So it's easy to be passive, but, you know, where's the adventure in just being, you know, sitting on the couch, drinking beer and watching a movie?
Or alone.
Or alone.
That's your recent show of choice.
Oh, the TV series Alone. Yeah.
Yes.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't mean alone by yourself. Alone. I meant the show.
So yeah, passivity that's one I struggle with because I can get content and passive.
Yeah. But sometimes we forget to protect our relation, like diligently protect against that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think especially in seasons when it's good.
Right? What do you mean?
Like if we're just kind of coasting.
Right.
It's easy to be passive because we're not having to resolve conflict. We're not having to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
All right. Well, what are some ways that we can be diligent to protect our marriages in both the big and small areas? I have some ideas. 1, keep our spouse our number 2 priority after God and before our kids, if we have them. You laughed.
Because you are number 2. You are my number 2, and I love you so almost perfectly.
Wait, okay, what is that a reference to? You said know. Number 2, and I think the Muppets Most Wanted.
Yeah, that's in there.
The whole song with I'm number 1, you're number 2.
Right. But it's kind of a funny thing to encourage our listeners to consider their spouses number 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to have God number 1 because our spouses, we're not going to fulfill each other's every need. And I don't think we were meant to. So, all right. 2, be selective of the friends you keep. So choose close friends of the same sex who will encourage and challenge us to fight for our marriages and our spouse. Number 3.
Yeah, I think, was it in a different podcast or something you've written where you're talking about be careful, you know, like if you're sort of complaining or grumbling or whatever about a situation in your marriage and that person, instead of like defending your marriage, you're like, yeah, your spouse is rotten. You should give him some space. You should, you know, get back at him or something. That's
in the book, Timas.
Okay, the book.
Yeah, this idea of having friends who will speak truth to you and not just what you want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need to have those kind of friends that are not going to affirm belly aching about your spouse.
It's like our pastors talked about at church. You know, Jesus was full of grace and truth.
Grace and truth, right?
It wasn't 50-50. He was 100% full of grace, 100% full of truth. And so I think we need friends who are full of grace and truth, and to be friends who are full of grace and truth.
Good point.
I mean, we can't always help our friends in their marriages because sometimes they don't tell us what's going on.
Right.
But yeah, so be selective with the friends you keep and be a good friend. Okay, connect in busy seasons. So we have a lot of busy seasons.
We do.
And sometimes connecting is saying, hey, we haven't been connecting. We need to connect. We need to go on date night.
Right.
Or
Funky Town.
Yes. Yeah. If you've watched the show Parenthood, you will know what that means. Okay. Rescue days gone wrong. So be willing to apologize, forgive, and start again.
I've done that.
It was our first Valentine's Day. I think I wrote an article based on that, and that's where this idea came from. Well, and that was an issue of maybe you said something you shouldn't, but I didn't have to respond to what you said in the way I did either. It took both of us to rescue the day gone wrong.
There you go. Yeah, apologizing, that's such a big thing. Because, like, when I really screw up, there's no way to climb out of it. Yeah. There's no way for me to climb out of it. So I've got to apologize, and I'm relying on your forgiveness, and then we can get it resolved.
Right. And I will say, for all of you fellow wives listening, sometimes it takes men a little longer to come to the conclusion to apologize.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what was it? Shanti Feldhahn for Women Only talks about how sometimes it takes 8 or 9 hours more for a man to kind of process.
Yeah, that's
conflict.
My experience. Sometimes it takes quite a while.
So
for me,
I bring that up to say, like, I have learned not to be discouraged if it takes you a while to realize maybe you need to apologize. And so those listening, don't get discouraged if that's also the case. Be patient. Yeah. All right. Are you ready for the third thing we should have follow through in?
Yes. Let's hear it.
Freely enjoy your marriage.
Well, that seems obvious, so you're going to have to explain that.
Yeah, well, feeding and protecting are important, but enjoying it is too. And to enjoy is to experience with joy or take pleasure in. And I think a lot of times people...
So how do you intend to take joy in your marriage?
That's a good question.
It's a great question.
I'll share with you what I have, and we'll see whether I answer it or not.
All right.
I may or may not. So I think sometimes in Christian circles, people get hung up on marriage is about holiness and not happiness.
Right.
And yes, it does help us.
But that's a big part of marriage.
Right. Yeah. It helps us not be as selfish. It helps us learn to put someone else before ourselves.
That was actually one of the reasons that I wanted to get married to you, because I thought you would be good for me. To be honest.
Almost 22 years later, am I good for you?
I'm better than I was.
Good. Well, I am too.
No.
Yeah. So, but I think there's that focus sometimes, and I don't believe that means we can't and shouldn't enjoy our marriages. I mean, look back at the garden and Adam and Eve, and God called everything he created, including marriage, good. Mm-hmm. So what are some things that we can do to more freely enjoy our marriage? Here are some thoughts, and you can tell me whether I answered your question.
Okay, some
or
practical
not.
suggestions, thoughts.
Laugh together. Huh. Apparently, I mean, don't remember the statistics, but it's in my book, Team Us, also, or our book, because you have comments in there.
You wrote most of it.
Yeah,
I just came along and made little jokes.
There are couples that don't laugh together. That is not every couple laughs together.
Yeah, I can see that. And like ways to laugh together are not just in the conversations you have and enjoying the conversation, laughing about stuff, but maybe you could watch a comedy. Maybe you could do an adventure, go to some outing, where stuff is silly, maybe help me out here, like a fair, not an affair, but a fair, right. Or a carnival or something like that, or a new restaurant that's like startling and you sort of laugh about stuff that comes out. Yeah. Or walks and you see a weird animal that barks at you.
See, okay, this is kind of off topic, but still on topic.
Okay.
Like, you will laugh when you are at a show and you are really enjoying something, even if it's not funny. Which I don't think always the people around us understand. And it took me a while to learn that about you.
Yeah.
That when you really enjoy or appreciate talent or take joy in something, it causes you to laugh.
Yeah.
Or chuckle.
It's true.
Which is really interesting.
It is. I wrote my master's thesis on laughter. So maybe that changed the way I experience that.
Yeah. So if you listening, if you're ever with us at a show or something and Ted laughs and you're like, well, this isn't funny, it's because he's thoroughly enjoying
it. Right. So number 2.
Okay. Get away together.
Yep.
Which we are doing next week. We're going on a cruise.
We're going on a cruise. I know it's a first world problem thing for a lot of people going on a cruise, but I mean, I'm in my 50s. We went on a cruise last year.
Or a year and a half ago, I think.
A year and a half ago. And we found a very cheap one, as cheap as we could through Costco. And yeah, I mean, I love it.
Yeah, and get away, like we're at a season in our lives now where we can get away because we don't have young kids.
Mm-hmm. And I work from home.
And he works from home. Well, even if you didn't, you'd have vacation time. Hopefully.
I would have vacation time.
But I know a lot of, when we were so we're trying more to get away, the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like every year and a half or something like that. But when our kids were little, getting away might have been date night.
Mm-hmm.
So when we say get away, it doesn't mean you have to go on a cruise or some fancy vacation.
You're creating memories together. Just the two of you.
Yeah.
That's a way to feed your marriage or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Write your story together. Or in other words, dream together. And we recently did an interview with Mike and Kate Battistelli on dreaming together. It was really good.
It really was good.
So if you're listening and you haven't heard that yet, go back and listen to that one. And then I have practice Christ-like love.
Which is, like you just said, full of grace and truth.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think when you are full of grace and truth, you're going to enjoy your relationship. Because you're not hiding things or holding things against each other because you're speaking truth. But yet you also have the grace that is realizing that you both have your moments.
You both have your moments.
Right. Which we do. We both have our moments.
Yep. Yep, that's real life.
All right. So to summarize, the true secret, at least according to us on this podcast, to a strong marriage is more about our follow through in 3 specific areas than about how strong we are going into it. And those areas are actively feed your marriage, diligently protect your marriage, and freely enjoy your marriage. And I want to add, I think that this idea of follow through and consistent practices rather than strong foundation might have the potential to be encouraging to anyone listening who maybe didn't have a strong foundation when they first got married or didn't have a strong start.
Yeah, because it's not all about that.
Right. But now you're going, okay, can we still have a strong marriage? What do we need to do? Sure. Is it out of the question because we didn't start with a strong foundation?
Yeah.
And so this is to say no.
Yeah. So just whack your marriage with a Thor's hammer.
Or Popeye's mallet, depending upon how old you are. So after this break, we'll be back with this week's Us Time Challenge. For this week's Us Time Challenge, pick one of those ideas from each of the areas to put into practice this week. Or if that's overwhelming, just pick one. But it could be you give your spouse more praise this week. You try to get your praise to criticism ratio closer to 5 to 1. And maybe you also rescue any days gone wrong, and maybe you laugh together.
Easy.
Right. For us, we're going to get away.
Yep. And we're going to laugh together.
Yes. Those are both in the same category. But we're going to enjoy our marriage this week.
Yes, we are. We absolutely are.
So thanks for joining us on the Team Us podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, and we'd love to have you leave a review over at Apple Podcasts. We're looking forward to next time as we keep talking about how grace, commitment, and cooperation can help couples live the everyday moments of marriage together.
Team Us with Ted and Ashleigh Slater is a production of Life Audio and Salem Media. If you liked what you heard today, please take a second to rate and review the podcast in your favorite podcast app, so that more listeners like you can find the show. For more faith-filled, inspirational podcasts, visit us at lifeaudio.com.